Hi from my bedroom floor. Ew, you can see that my bed's not in the background. Okay, let me find a different angle. Okay. Oh, can we use the window for like some lighting? Is that gonna work? That's terrifying. Okay. I can't use my usual corner because I haven't unpacked my suitcase yet. I just flew in from Oregon yesterday. Actually, no, that's a lie. This morning at 1 a.m. And that's why I look rough. But I wasn't sure when else I'd have time to do a video this week, so I am pre-filming it today. Let's see. I'm just gonna stand here. I also don't feel like digging out my tripod and setting it up, especially because I can't use my usual corner, so okay, so this is not gonna work. So I'm holding my camera with the handheld tripod. I'm just gonna have to sit on my kitchen floor again, I swear. Okay, let me get my pillow. All right, so now that we got all that fun stuff out of the way, we're gonna talk about books that I read in, We're gonna talk about books that I read in 2025. Now, I tried to do this monthly. I was gonna try to do this monthly in 2025. I filmed January's in like the beginning of February. I remember it was actually Super Bowl Sunday because I was wearing a shirt with red on it and I live in Eagles territory and didn't realize that until I went to a sports bar with my friends. Yeah, but it was that day and I didn't get around to editing it until like the end of February, I think. So I uploaded it, but then I was like, it's the end of February and I haven't done a books I read in February video and I'm just not gonna like, I just didn't think I was gonna catch up. So I was like, you know what, I'll just do this video at the end of 2025 and talk about all the books I read. But here's the thing is I read most of the books I read in January. Like I read a lot of books in January and then the rest were like dispersed through the other months. And I'm not talking about all of them again. So I left that video up as unlisted from whenever I uploaded it. And I'm gonna link it in the description here. So the books that I read in January are gonna be in that first part. Go watch that if you care about all the books I read in January and then come back to this one, all right? So I'm gonna put that unlisted and leave it I'm making a playlist for book reviews. It's gonna be in that playlist. And then I'm just gonna dive right in starting with February. And unlike January's, most of the books I read for the rest of the year, I don't have physically because I borrowed a lot of books from the school book room that I then gave back before I left. So I'm just gonna read them off Goodreads. So I'm just gonna go off my list on Goodreads. I'm not gonna physically hold up any of the books. All right, so my goal was to read 50 books in 2025, and I read 10 books or 11 books in January. And then I read 27 books total for the year. So started off really strong, did not continue that way. But I will get into that because a lot of this all goes back to Sunrise on the Reaping, which we will get to. All right, so let's see. January, what was the last one I read in January? I feel like it was Just Mercy. Yes, okay. So for February, this is when I started taking a lot of books out of the school's book room to borrow. And the first one is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I loved this book. I thought it was really good. I felt very strongly for the character. I felt her, for her, like the way it was written made me really want to, it just made me feel what the character was feeling. Like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it better than that, but yeah. It's about a girl, it's about a high school girl in a Latin American family who deals with a lot of pressure from her parents, and she has a twin brother who is seen as like better. She has a twin brother who she often gets compared to, and her outlet for everything is poetry, and she writes poetry, and it was really good. I loved it. Then I read Dear Martin by Nick Stone, and that is the first in, I believe, a trilogy. I haven't read the other two yet, but they're on my eventual TBR. I thought it was good. There is kind of like the like main tragic event that happens was kind of a surprise to me. Like it felt like it definitely caught me off guard. I don't want to say it came out of nowhere, but it definitely caught me off guard, and it was like it hit. So Yeah, there were like some things about the way the book itself was written that I wasn't a big fan of, but overall I did enjoy that story. Then I read Bronx Masquerade by Nikki Grimes. I really liked that one. It's like told, basically, so that it's like this poetry club of students, and it's told through like, they'll have a narration and then they'll write a poem. Wait, no, it's one of the students saying his feelings about everybody who just read a poem or something like that. It's been so long since I've read it, but it'll be like a narration and then somebody's poem and then a narration and then somebody else's poem. And I really enjoyed that. It made me want to like do something like that with my students, but unfortunately just like with our curriculum, I just don't think we would be able to do like a poetry club kind of thing, but I did really like the idea of it. I liked the culture of the poetry club. I thought it was really well done. Then I read Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I never actually had to read that for school, so I went ahead and took it from the book room and read it, and I was not really a fan. It took me a while to read just because Zora Neale Hurston wrote in like, what's the word I'm looking for, dialect. Like the way she wrote it was like in the dialect of how the character was speaking, which is like a completely valid literary choice. Like I respect it, but it was just very hard for me to like, while I was reading it, it's like I had to like translate it while I was reading it in a way sometimes, and so it took me a bit longer to read than I would have liked. It wasn't just like a relaxing read, it was like I had to be very engaged with it, and I just didn't get it. Like I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, if that makes sense. Then I read A Walk to Remember by Nicholas Sparks. So I've never read a Nicholas Sparks book. I'm not really a big fan of Nicholas Sparks movies, but A Walk to Remember is like one of the good Nicholas Sparks movies. It's honestly, I think it's like the best one of the ones that I've seen. I haven't seen many because again, not a big fan, but I think it was like the least predictable. And so I wanted to read the book version, and I really enjoyed it. Like the book and the movie are definitely two separate stories, but I enjoyed both. Like I'm not here to say like the movie's better or the book's better. Like they're two completely different stories, and I respect them each for what they are. So that was a book that I enjoyed. Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. I actually met Jason Reynolds this year. Can you believe that? Like, let me put a picture in here. Yeah, he was so sweet. I was very inspired by what he had to say at the, it was like a library event that I was at. He's a great person, and a great author. I really enjoyed Long Way Down. It's the story of a boy who is deciding whether or not to avenge somebody for killing, I think, his brother. It's been a long time since I read it. And he's on like a certain floor of the building, so he goes down each floor, and in each floor of the elevator, somebody, like the ghost of somebody who died by gun violence, joins him. I won't say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but it was basically you're like, and you're kind of left with a cliffhanger, which I did like because he doesn't actually tell you whether or not the character is going to avenge his brother or not. But yeah, I loved the way that was written. I was like on the edge of my seat the whole time. I really liked the, it's not like, it wasn't very black and white. It was like, I loved like the moral gray area and the exploration of that. Then we have Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I don't know if I pronounced that right. But you know, it's a classic, Brave New World. I really liked the idea of it. It was a little hard to follow at some points, but I thought it was definitely a strong political message that I definitely appreciated. Well, and I think it's definitely still relevant, unfortunately. And I liked the idea of it a lot. There were some parts of the execution that were confusing to me, but I really liked the idea of Brave New World. I think I gave it 4 stars. Yeah, 4 stars. I haven't been saying the star ratings for any of these, but you know, you guys can just look on my Goodreads. I tried to write out reviews at first. And I was good about that for a while. Then I kind of fell off. So some of them have written out reviews, some of them don't. Then I read Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. I really liked that book. I never read it like in like the whatever summer that it was like very popular on Tumblr. I never read it back then, but I finally read it because it was in the book room and I was fascinated by it. It was fascinating. I really liked the ending. Like, I know it wasn't like the most realistic ending, but I did really enjoy it. Then I read I Hadn't Meant to Tell You This by Jacqueline Woodson. I've read Jacqueline Woodson's book of poetry, Brown Girl Dreaming, when I taught it one semester, my second year of teaching, I think. And I hadn't read any of her other books, but I saw that one in the book room and I was like, you know what? I will read that. And it was a short story. It was like a novella, I think, but it was very interesting. Like, I would love, like, I know that like it is short because the story that it was telling, like she used the space, like it was not meant to be longer, but I wanted more lore. Like, I would have loved like an expanded version. I would have loved to know what happens next. I was sad. I really enjoyed it. It's not like a happy read, but it was intense. Like it was a good intense. Then we got Sunrise on the Reaping. That took a lot out of me. Like, loved it. What did I give it? Did I give it 5 stars? I did give it 5 stars. I tend to round up. Like, I might kind of say 4.5 because there was some stuff in Sunrise on the Reaping that I was like, okay, you're just doing this for the bit. Like, don't hate me. Like, because I love Effie. I love her as a character in Sunrise on the Reaping, but I'm like, really? Like really, she's there. But for the most part, like that, I feel like that's the most intense Suzanne Collins novel I've ever read. It was a lot, and I needed time to process that after I finished reading it. Like, usually when I finish a book, like the next day or even later the same day, I jump into the next book. This was where that stopped. I needed time. And you can like see how much time I took if you look on my Goodreads when I finished Sunrise on the Reaping versus when I finished the next book in the list, because it wasn't all because I needed to process Sunrise on the Reaping. It was like, first I needed to process Sunrise on the Reaping, then I needed to process like my entire life. And then finally I'm like, okay, I need to start reading again. So yeah, so that one, honestly, like no notes except for, you know, but like almost no notes. I am looking forward to the movie. I love The Hunger Games. I didn't start reading it until like I was in my 20s. Like I tried to start reading it my sophomore year of high school and everybody was reading it, and I just couldn't get into it for some reason. But then I picked it up in my 20s and I was like, wait, this is actually so good. So like literally like 2016, I read the original trilogy. And then I watched all the movies. And then I read obviously the prequels, but yeah, love The Hunger Games, love Suzanne Collins. She has a very subtle, I don't know if I would call it subtle, but she has a call out to AI in Sunrise on the Reaping that I just, as somebody who hates AI, loved it. No notes. All right, next I read, didn't do this intentionally, but it's Hunger, not to be confused with The Hunger Games, but it's Hunger by Roxane Gay. That was another one that was just in the book room that I was like, you know, I keep seeing people talk about this, but I've never read it. I have a hard time rating autobiographies just because I'm like, how am I going to tell you whether or not your life was good? Like, I don't know. There were some things that like I felt like she said a lot about things that could have been said less, but that was also like kind of the point. And there were some things that I wanted her to talk more about that she didn't, but overall I did enjoy that. The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie. I never watched 8 Passengers. I was kind of creeped out by the concept of that. Like, I never really got into family vloggers. But I was interested in her story, and so I listened to the audiobook of that one. Yeah, honestly, I loved it a lot. Right, then I listened to the audiobook for 107 Days. by Kamala Harris. And all I'm gonna say about that is that I finished that on the same day that The Life of a Showgirl came out. And let me tell you, I needed Miss Taylor. After I finished that book, I needed Taylor. I was like, I have a lot of feelings. I need Taylor to like give me nicer feelings. There's something missing. There's a book on here that I read that is not on here. Did I actually read 28 books? Because it is not on here. Okay, we're gonna go back to that list, but I read, I guess I just didn't enter the date. Yeah, because here it is between, it's on my books read right between Their Eyes Were Watching God and Long Way Down, but it wasn't on my reading challenge. Okay, so I read Autopsy of an Ex-Teen Heartthrob by Avan Jogia, and you know how I just said I have a hard time ranking or rating people's autobiographies because I'm like, how am I going to tell you that your life was good or not? I hated it. I don't know what I was like, I don't know what I was expecting from it, but it wasn't what I got. Yeah, I did not enjoy that book. I think I listened to the audio. Yeah, I listened to the audio. Yeah, I wasn't like an active fan of Victorious when it was airing. It was more like I would passively watch Victorious if I needed something on in the background while I was playing The Sims. But I paid more attention to it than I did some of the other shows I left on in the background, like Big Time Rush. Like, it took me years to realize Caitlin Tarver was on that show. Like, I was a fan of her music before I knew she was on Big Time Rush. And then somebody mentioned that she was on Big Time Rush. I'm like, I have been watching that show in the background of playing Sims for a year. What do you mean she's on it? But yeah, I did pay more attention to Victorious than some of the other shows I had on in the background. I think the last Nickelodeon show that I like truly invested in from beginning to end was iCarly, which was like right before Victorious. And then this is like around the time that I gave up on Disney Channel too, because Good Luck Charlie was like the last Disney show that I invested in. Moving on. Okay, after I read 107 Days, I read Ghost by Jason Reynolds. I actually started reading this while I was in line to meet him because, yeah, I realized I didn't bring a book of his for him to sign. So I bought, he had talked about Ghost in his, I don't want to say interview. Was it an interview? When he spoke to the auditorium, he had talked about Ghost. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy Ghost. I'm going to read Ghost. And I started reading it while I was in line to meet him, but I was reading Sunrise on the Reaping at the same time, so I was like, well, I gotta finish that before I start another book. And then I realized months later, I was like, I never finished Ghost. So I finished that in October, I think. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was definitely like more for like middle school age group than me, but there were definitely mature themes in it. Like it was written for middle schoolers, but there were more mature themes in it. Like it was a very like I thought it was very well written for like balancing that. Then I read Paris Hilton's memoir because I had an Audible credit because I forgot to cancel my Audible subscription. And I was like, you know what, this one sounds interesting. So I picked Paris Hilton's memoir. This is one that I can actually articulate why I gave it 4 stars instead of 5, despite it being a memoir. And I swear like my instinct is to give those 5 stars because I'm like, again, how am I going to tell you about your life? But there were things that I wanted to know more about that she didn't go into a lot of detail on. And there was also like this weird glazing of Sia at the end. And I have beef with Sia because of her Maddie Ziegler movie that came out a few years ago. So, and there's also there's a lot of reasons to not like Sia, but I don't know, that wasn't why I gave it 4 stars. It was mostly because like there were things that she didn't go into that I wanted to know more about, like her animals, for lack of a better way of saying it. If you know, you know. I wanted to know more about that. But yeah, she did tell a very powerful story about like her childhood and teenage years and like going through the different camps that she was in. And so that was, you know, I didn't know a lot about those and what they were like. And so I did appreciate hearing her basically give her testimony about the terrible things that went on there. The last book I read was Keeping the Moon by Sarah Dessen. I was a huge Sarah Dessen fan in high school. I read almost all of her books. I know I tried to read Dreamland in, I want to say 8th or 9th grade and just couldn't really get into that one, but I still have it like on my bookshelf. Like I do plan to read it someday. But Keeping the Moon was one that I hadn't read, and I guess I got it at the thrift store a few years ago because there's a thrift store price tag on it. And I just never read it, so I decided to give it a read. And you know, it's a Sarah Dessen book. Like I don't know what else to say. Like it's cozy, it's nostalgic, it's, you know, it reminds me of the books I would read when I was a teenager, and I liked it. Didn't love it, I will say. There was an opportunity for the protagonist to date somebody her age, and instead there was like she was 15 and there was like an 18, 19-year-old character that she kind of ended up with. Not a big fan of that. I know it was written in 1999, so like the perception of that was much different back then, but I'm still not a fan. Would not have chosen to do that. But anyway, those are the books that I read in 2025. Again, if you want to see the 10 or 11 books that I read in January, I will link that video in the description, as well as in the book reviews playlist that this is also a part of. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week with a new video. I'm hoping that it's gonna be a format with me vlog, because I'm hoping to get my edits back this week. Not sure. But I think it's this week. It's either this week or next week. But if not that, then I'm gonna do like a video talking about writer's block, which I'm less excited about. But not like, I can still, like, it's still gonna be a good video. But you know, I'm more excited to format my book. So so yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you next Saturday. Bye.